felt like I'd give him a sentence and like the worst possible care. They said, he'll be in and out 4 weeks, we'll just review his meds, check on, make sure there's nothing else going on and he can come back out. But it was 4.5 years and...
Hi Becky, lovely to have you here. I'm really pleased to be welcoming you here today for an episode of What Does Good Care Look Like, because I think you of all people have got a story to tell around that. So just for the listeners' information, you are a lived experience advocate for your brother Elliot.
Yeah.
So Elliot had 4.5 years, was it, detained in a mental health ward in an ATU, and you and your family then had a long and difficult struggle to bring him out of that situation, and I think a lot of it was about how you had to very quickly learn how to navigate the whole system. You were working with lawyers and associations and social workers and psychiatrists and NHS staff, and there seemed to be this whole kind of system around Elliot, but actually a lot of what he needed was just listening to the family viewpoint. So I think yours is a very powerful story, and it's one I've heard before, and it's been very close to my heart. So I'm really pleased that we can talk about it today. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So you've spent about the last, since Elliot's discharge, about 3.5 years ago, is that right?
Yeah.
You've spent a lot of that time campaigning as well. You've done lots of work with MenCap, with the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, with Inclusion North, Catalyst Care Group, and some of these people were people that kind of helped you in that journey, weren't they?
They were.
Yeah. So it's nice now to see, what can move on from that situation and make a positive of what was a really traumatic time. So before we launch in, we've just had a Christmas period. We're back to it. How was Christmas this year? How was it for you and the family? How was Elliot?
Elliot was good. His normal day, which is he struggles because when things close, he can't quite understand it. So he still went to the deep because it was closed. Because it's the day. It is like fully closed. So he goes and walks around the empty building a couple of times in the freezing cold, and that's what he likes to do. And then he just goes back and has his dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be clear, Elliot hasn't got necessarily a mental health condition or a reoccurring one. Elliot has autism and learning disability.
Yeah.
Is that right? So if we go back to early days then, early childhood with Elliot, what was it like growing up with Elliot? What was it like being his sister? Do you remember any experiences of requiring any kind of level of care, or was it very much a family thing?
It was very much a family thing until we got to 13. We didn't really need much support other than Elliot went to a specialist school once he was diagnosed with autism. I don't really remember much of it because I was quite young myself, but we used to play and do normal things together. Mum used to take us on days out. We used to go to a horse that we absolutely loved, random. Mum just used to chuck a bag of carrots in the car and we'd walk for miles. And
just a random horse.
I was so yeah. It was a place in Leeds called Temple Newsom.
Oh yeah,
it sounded like a little cute farm, and
it's
just quiet, and we used to always go there.
Nice. And so, when did you start to notice that maybe Elliot needed some support? What did that look like?
As he got older, maybe when puberty and your body starts to change, things become a little bit more complicated, and we needed a bit more assistance from like the community team. And
was it helpful? I mean, it's difficult, I think, for you, isn't it? Because you're remembering this as a child, not from an adult perspective. But like, do you remember it being a complicated thing, or fairly straightforward, or something weird that was happening in your home, that there were people here that you didn't recognise, or how did it feel for you?
I think once you start seeing people coming in and like talking about different things like medication or interventions that they can put in place, and it was trying to navigate what they mean. For me, obviously, it was just go to school and come home from school, and like that, it was very different. And just Elliot used to come home in a taxi.
Yeah,
I noticed that we were going to pick him up a lot more.
Okay.
Like, so there was obviously issues with the taxi and school. But I lost my trail.
No, that's fine. So it wasn't very noticeable that that there were support staff coming in or anything like that. He went to school, and it was a typical sibling relationship. Elliot was at home.
Yeah, I don't think we got support until maybe Elliot was about 15.
Yeah.
Around 15, 16 time, where we had people coming in to help. It was mainly managed by like us and support of social workers and like the community team.
Did you, was there periods in his time when he spent time in hospital during that time period, or was he always at home with you?
Yeah, so when things got really bad, we went through a stage where his obsessive compulsiveness was off the scale. So he would just constantly turn a light switch on and off, and he couldn't settle until he'd done it the correct way, or ejecting the videotape in and out, or rewinding it to make sure it's at the exact bit where it wanted to start. And then all of a sudden he lost the ability to come downstairs. So I had to piggyback him up and down the stairs when he wanted to go. But that was it was only me that could do that, which was obviously quite difficult because I was going to school and he was not able to go to school that day. He would remain up or down.
Did he go to a different school to you?
Yeah, so he was in a specialist school.
Yeah. And are you the older sibling?
I am.
Yeah. So there's a sense of responsibility probably for Elliot as well, like as your younger brother. I think. How many years difference was it?
It's about a year and a bit.
Oh yeah, so you were quite close then, quite close in age. Into adulthood then, how did those things change? How did it look any different? Did he stay with your mum and dad? Did he?
Yeah, so Elliot remained with us until the section of when he was an adult, for when he was in for 4.5 years, which was in 2018. He was taken from the home to a PQ ward, which was not specifically for people with autism and a learning disability.
Okay.
And he remained there for 8 weeks because there was nowhere else for him to go. Spent most of the time in seclusion or distress, because obviously there was different kinds of people in there that didn't necessarily understand his needs and his space. His staff were able to stay with him throughout the day, but not on a night.
Right.
Which was a help. And we were able to go in and on the ward with him. So they recognised that obviously he needed support. And then eventually, once the 8 weeks, managed to find a single occupancy ward at a different hospital. And he remained there for the 4 years.
Yeah. And that must have been really difficult to see him. Did Elliot understand why he was there? Like, how did that, do you remember any of that time period in terms of, what did he think was happening and what did he think was coming up? I guess that was quite confusing.
So it was hard because obviously I was the one that followed him up there and settled him into the ward. Me and my mum went together. We stayed in a hotel over the road from the hospital because it was 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then as soon as we were able to go back in, we were there. I just said to him that we just want to get you some help and just have a look at your medication and see if it's right. He doesn't understand that. So just like going to make you feel better and come back home. And that was the most difficult thing, is that I made the decision because my mum was really struggling, and she supported me, but it was tough because I said, I think this is what we need to do, because we'd been in children's services multiple times and, he just went in, got the help he needed, and he'd come home, and I didn't expect anything different. And then they said, he'll be in and out 4 weeks. We'll just review his meds, make sure there's nothing else going on, and he can come back out. But it was 4.5 years. And, I felt like I'd give him a sentence and like the worst possible guy.
But you weren't know, were you, that situation?
I had such as growing up that, he goes in for a few weeks, we're allowed to pick him up, and he comes home on a weekend, and then they take him back. But no.
Yeah, so the experience from children's services just looked very different as soon as he hit adulthood.
Very different.
What, if it's okay, can you just describe, obviously we know that he got stuck there for that time period. What do you think contributed to that happening? Do you think it was just the system, the way the system operates differently, or do you think there were more factors?
I don't think we'll ever truly know what or why it took so long, but I think one of the main factors is that he wasn't allowed to come home. So he had a house, he had a family waiting for him, he had his own vehicle, like we were well equipped we just needed a bit of support with the challenging side. Obviously he was getting bigger and stronger and, his frustration was higher, so we couldn't always manage the situation safely.
And when he went in, were you worried? Is that kind of what led up to those steps of him being admitted?
He was harming himself.
Right, okay.
He started hitting his head off like hard objects, like concrete floors or brick walls. And we were worried because, you see boxes.
Yeah. And you're worried of the damage
that he was doing to himself. Yeah. That was the main reason that we wanted to get help, because we didn't want him to injure or be left with lifelong conditions from the damage he was doing.
So let's kind of take it to maybe, so it was the first 8 weeks were elsewhere, and then he came to the place that he ended up being for nearly 4 years thereafter. Well, over 4 years in that single occupancy setting. Month one's passed, for example, and you're expecting at this point, 4 weeks in, you're expecting, right, we're going to work out discharge, sort out some medication, move on, bring him home, I'm assuming. Maybe with some extra care. I don't know whether that had been discussed or anything. That kind of first meeting that you got to, and if you can put your mind back to that period, what was being discussed at that point? Did it feel like, right, we're getting ready to discharge Elliot and he's going to be coming back home, or did it feel different to that?
No, I think like discharge was mentioned, but it was never imminent.
Okay.
Like they were working towards, but it was a lot of obstacles in the way they started bringing in that the house wasn't suitable for him to be in because it had stairs, and they presented if anything happened on the stairs, then the staff wouldn't be able to engage. The layout, they felt that mum was more of a mum rather than a carer, which is understandable. Like she'd put the needs of him in a different way to the staff would see.
Yeah.
So we ended up making the staff team redundant because we couldn't keep them on. And then we lost the direct payment. So then we didn't have a home for him to come to. We didn't have a staff team for him to come home to. And then they say that his needs were different, and because of his challenging, that he wouldn't be able to come home and that he'd need to have his own bespoke property built with a provider that they select for him to be able to be in the community.
And at this point, you must have been thinking, right, they're building a house. That's not 4 weeks. How did you and your family respond? What did you say to that?
If in all honesty, as all they said it would only be 4 weeks, I think my focus was just, we're going to get there next week.
Yeah.
We're going to get there the week after. Because if I would never have thought that it would be 4.5 years that I was driving up there in my car with an empty boot to move him out.
Yeah. And every time that you went, how often were the review meetings?
I think they had an MDT once a week that they had their own that we weren't allowed to attend, and then they'd have, I can't really remember, it must maybe once a week. We were really lucky because they did keep in contact with us and we could ring the ward and stuff, and we did have meetings like to discuss things going forward, but big meetings were every once a month.
Yeah. And that's when everybody
got together.
Yeah. So who was involved in those meetings?
So we'd have the MDT team at the hospital, we'd have the community team, social workers, ICB, us.
Yeah. It would feel like everybody you'd need to get that situation moving forward. So what do you think made it stick? Was it simply the housing? Do you think it just took too long to find housing? Or in the end, when Elliot was discharged, was it with all of those factors kind of like tick, 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 and it just took that long to get those things in place?
We had COVID, which a lot of the blame then shifted.
Okay.
So, we can't get materials for the house.
We can't build.
We can't find a provider because we're in a poor recruitment area. It was just always something that was in the way. He'd be ready we'll be ready to go. And then, we'll have to delay it another 4 weeks because there's no materials or there's no funding. I mean, we must have been in a funding argument for a good 4 weeks with the LA and the ICB deciding who was paying what percentage.
Yeah. Which is probably not a conversation that as a family member you want to really hear. That's probably a close.
And especially when obviously at that time we were breaching close, he'd been injured.
Yeah.
And obviously we'd had the Hopes team involved and he was like on the national concern list and a lot of people come in at that time. And I don't want to be sat in a meeting hearing, we're just having a bit of a discussion about who's going to pay for what and it's taking a bit of time and it's like,
Yeah, Elliot sat waiting. And while he was sat waiting, how as a family member did you explain to him what was going on?
We had to really simple terms. So eventually once we realised where he was going, what we were making, we showed him like a building site of a place and said, this is Elliot's bungalow and Elliot's bungalow is going to be here. But we could never give him a date because it changed all the time. So we just kept saying, we're building, we're working on it, which sometimes works with Elliot, but then he starts to think, right, I'm being fobbed off here. And then he blows up and then the RC changes his mind about discharge because he's presenting badly and he's doing different things to what he was doing 2 weeks ago. But they never seem to understand the frustration. Like, he was frustrated because
he was trapped.
He can see a bungalow, like, there it is. Why can't I just go? He doesn't understand that, this has got to be, water's got to be connected. I've got to have an electricity provider. I've got to have a staff team to take me there.
Do you think there were more things at play other than just the housing? Because, I mean, for even by most building standards, 4.5 years to build a bungalow is probably a long time period. Do you think there were more things you've said that you feel like it got set back when Pete, and I've heard this before in lots of other situations, and we need to bear in mind there's another kind of 2,000 people probably in Elliot's situation, so it's not an isolated situation. Do you think that there are more things that at play that just kept pushing it back, like the goalpost changed? Does it feel like anything like that was happening while he was there?
The system's just not joined up.
Right.
So we could all be present in a meeting. We'd all have actions that we need to do, but then the actions just never got done, or somebody just didn't have the time, or somebody didn't turn up. It was, nobody works together. So like if the ICB needed something from the MDT and they ask multiple times, it doesn't come quick enough. So you're constantly chasing. It's like there's no accountability to each other because people are different entities. And when the meetings were held and it was being chaired, did it feel like there was ultimate responsibility on that chair to make sure those actions were complete on the deadline, or did it feel like that slipped quite a lot? The CTRs, like a CTR themselves, I find them like just a waste of time. In the end, when I saw one pop up in my calendar, I was like, just an hour of my life I'm not going to get back because, you've been let down so many times. There's only so much that you can give. And I think by the time we got to like 3 or 4, it was just frustration and sarcasm because they're all discussing, that wasn't completed last time, we'll re-add it in. And I'm like, it didn't need to be re-added in, we could have just done it. But it was funny because I was tasked with the mobility vehicle and I did it without a problem, got everything. They sent me a specification of what he had to have and I sourced it, but the only issue was that they only come with a wheelchair ramp and that I couldn't get one without one. So I presented it to him and they're like, oh no, we can't have that. I'll have to do another reassessment of it. So I had to arrange for the vehicle with the wheelchair ramp to be sent to the hospital for the OT and it's just like, there was no need. It was the same vehicle. It just had a ramp in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like things are just made more complicated than they need to be.
Yeah. No, it feels like there was it does feel like what you're describing is people being stuck in a system of bureaucracy. Like there's lots of stuff to do that's kind of not linked to Elliot. Okay, stepping forward a bit then, when he was finally discharged. In fact, before we go there, this whole 4.5 years, it must have had impact on your family unit. Do you want to just describe, because a lot of the work that you do now is about supporting siblings, is about advocacy for the inclusion of siblings into the conversation. Do you just want to describe how you felt as a family member supporting Elliot that was now an adult versus how you were treated and your experiences of supporting Elliot when he was a child?
It was really difficult, but you kind of had like a burn inside you to like, if I don't do it, who will? So I took on quite a lot of, if I don't do it, who will? So I was constantly sending the emails, doing the safeguarding, ringing the correct people for help, pushing people to listen, reaching out to people that if somebody just said on the Twitter post, have you spoke to this person? I was in. Luckily, I was doing it by myself for about maybe 1.5 years before I found somebody on X, which was Twitter, a solicitor, to help us. And she come at just the right time because I was at a stage where I couldn't do they were doing things that I wouldn't have even picked up on.
Right.
So I think it's about, it was a massive thing for me to find people who were in the situation to help me navigate a situation that I'd never been in before. But I'd just become a mum, not a year-old, just like when Elliot went into hospital. So, the challenges of having a 1-year-old. But I just had to get him out. It was just my soul was just, he can't be trapped like that in a place when he's got a family at home that really, really loves him and wanted him to do his best. And the whole reason we picked up the phone is because we didn't want him to hurt himself.
Yeah.
And then he was being hurt as that.
I know it's difficult, I'm sorry. Picking around all those bits.
I just want people to understand that it doesn't need to be this hard. Like, people don't need to go through abuse and trauma and ticky boxes to be able to live safely in the community. There's people out there who can provide safe care, who can provide. And I've seen some really good things with the intensive support teams that go in their home rather than taking them from a place that they're familiar with.
It must have been confusing to you why it wasn't an option for him to come back home, because that was the offer, wasn't it, from family?
Yeah, so we just wanted him to, get some help and support and understand why he felt the need to take it out on himself and what can we do differently to support him. But they just was adamant that he had to go in his own home with his own care provider. And then when they start arguing about, I remember they were like, oh, well, it's going to be really expensive. And I remember saying, well, you made your bed, now lay in it. We had everything to provide him. You said, no, that's not my problem.
Did you manage to build any kind of positive relationships with any of the professionals around that time? Or did it feel very much a kind of you and like you were on opposite teams?
Not really. I think towards the end when we was getting to discharge, a higher lady in the ICB came in to help. And I think that was the only person that I was able to have an honest conversation with without, I think that was the hardest thing. If you're open and honest and transparent, then I am going to work with you. Whereas if you're not and you're covering things up or making things difficult, then I'm not going to be.
And that was the hardest thing, wasn't it? It was seeing things that were probably putting Elliot in a worse position in that time period, when actually what you were hoping for was to get help during that time period. And then I suppose that then leads to a lot, it opens up a whole can of worms in terms of how do you then complain about the care that he's receiving, and when everybody that could possibly help feels like they're already involved in that situation. Did you feel like you could go outside of that or go elsewhere, or did you feel like you were kind of trapped and didn't know who to turn to?
No, it was very isolating until you find people that are in the same situation.
Yeah.
And like you said before, there is 2,000 plus people still stuck in this situation. And it doesn't need to be this long. Some people are 10 years in an 80 year.
I met somebody recently who was 20 years.
Yeah, like it just doesn't need to.
Yeah.
It's their life. You wouldn't treat animals. Like if you turned the news on and there was some harm done to an animal, there'd be absolute uproar. People need to realise that this is happening to humans in our community that need additional support. And it is a national issue.
Yeah. If you were to put it down, have you managed to kind of look back on that time period and put it down to certain things? And if we got these certain things right, then actually that wouldn't have happened for Elliot.
Yeah, I think if you look at now, if somebody is diagnosed with autism, I feel that it's a lot more understood than it was back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like, do it and get on with it type thing. They were learning, but there wasn't as much. Whereas now it's more socialised and like in our society, whereas I didn't think it was. Like I went to school and everybody was like, oh, you're the girl with the weird brother. Oh. Whereas now, like, oh, my brother's got autism, and it's very, everybody understands it. It's taught in school. People are learning more and more about it.
Yeah, my kids in primary school and they've come home talking, they understand.
Yeah.
At least in part, some of the observations that you would see if somebody was autistic, they're able to tell that back to me. So that's good, isn't it?
And that was one of the biggest things for me as well. With Elliot's house in the community, it looks like an inpatient unit. My kids have been inside the ward when we visited Elliot and stuff. I didn't want them to be made to believe that that was normal. That is how they should live, when really they can live in a normal house with normal things if they get the correct support.
Yeah.
So it was tricky because...
Yeah, you were modelling something that you didn't want them to see really as well. And it's how you protect as a mother. It's how you protect them from that situation at the same time as have them. Did they visit Elliot during that time period? Was it possible?
In hospital?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, they could come up with... Lila was only really little.
Yeah. And that's good. And how did they support that? Did they find you a separate space?
Well, because he was on his own ward.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We just went on. I just remember her pushing a little shopping trolley around. Yeah, it was just like open.
Good that they got to develop that relationship as well, even that.
That's really important to me.
Yeah. So maybe you never knew when this was actually real because of the number of times it was discussed, but on the build up to his actual discharge from hospital, by this point, so you said kind of a year and a half in, you'd got the support of solicitors. Were there other people on that journey that kind of helped push things forward and supported you throughout that process?
So unfortunately, in the 2 months before Elliot was due to be discharged, we didn't know he was going to be discharged at that stage, but there was an incident in hospital where he was severely injured, and it was a really hard time. And that triggered somebody to say that this person is not safe. So we had a referral to the Hopes team, which is run by Mersey Care, to come in and support Elliot while he was in hospital, and also support the staff to, how to be around him and what to do. And that was a massive shift because nobody actually spoke to him, which was quite difficult to hear because you're not there all the time. So he would just be sat on the sofa and they'd be in the other room, and he was very, very isolated. And then when Hopes got in and said, no, we need to sit and have our dinner with him and, talk to him, like you don't need to be sat right next to him, but just be present so he knows that he can say or ask for something. And then that also, a senior intervener.
Yeah.
So we got the lady, she is brilliant. she was like, crack the whip, and we ended up having a meeting once a week with a spreadsheet that was green, yellow and red, and everybody was held accountable. And if that action wasn't complete by the next meeting, why?
Yeah.
Like it was, and things really, really moved. And then he got discharged.
Amazing. So already we've seen quite a stark difference between the meetings of old and how we got to the point where he was at discharge.
But it shouldn't get to the point where somebody is injured to trigger
the right care.
The right care, yeah. Like.
So I guess if we think about the things that would have enabled a much quicker discharge for Elliot, already you've identified housing being an option. So making sure that something's built quicker than 4.5 years probably, but also somebody being accountable and holding everybody within that circle to account for the actions and the right time frames, and maybe also having a sense of urgency. But because before you described that lady that got involved, I didn't hear much urgency in the other kind of stuff that you were talking about. It felt like it could just roll on. Let's think about Elliot in the mix of this. How did he change during that time period? Was it difficult to observe? I mean, I know the answer to this, but was it difficult to observe him in that situation? Did you see any change in his behaviour? Did you see hope, I guess, from him, or did he still access the community? Was he still living a life that you would want him to see whilst he was there?
So he was still able to access the community. So if there was a driver and if there was a vehicle available, so he could still go out to like for his lunch or for a walk. We used to have a family day once a month where we'd all go up, me, mum, kids, Dan, and just go do something. So he used to love the football stadium.
Yeah.
Or he made us walk a reservoir. The kids and mum and Dan didn't make it, so I kept going. And then we made it. But then on the way back, he just sat down and was like, no, I'm done. And it's like, we can't just be done. We've got to walk back. So he did access, but it was very punitive. If he did something wrong, he wasn't allowed out. There was never a reset. So when somebody gets distressed and they have a bit of a meltdown, it can be horrible, can be challenging. But when he's calm, you should just
that's it. Behind us now.
We go. But it was very like, sometimes it could be the next day, or sometimes it could be afterwards, or sometimes it could be weeks.
Do you feel like people understood autism and how to support an autistic adult?
Not within that trust.
So that's probably one of the big things that actually could lead to better care in that situation, is a lot more intensive training around that.
And then one of the hardest things for me is that he stopped telling me things that was going on, because normally I was known as Beckii will fix it. And he stopped. And I kind of said to the PBS lady, why isn't he told me, like, this has happened? And obviously he was losing his colour in his face, and he was just like going into himself a little bit. And then she said, it's because nothing's changing.
Yeah.
And that was really hard, because he couldn't see me trying. He just saw himself stuck on a hospital ward, not being able to come home.
But you did everything that you could. Absolutely everything. All right. Let's think to now then. Different story.
Different story.
How's he doing now?
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's mischievous, still trying to push, but he's doing really well.
Yeah.
Doing everything he loves. Been to London 3 times.
What did he do in London?
Gherkin.
Nice.
Oh, that's the other one. Who's this? Lennon Hall building.
Oh, okay.
I've probably got it wrong. Well, yeah, something like that. Yeah, he loves it.
Yeah, good. And what, if you describe why it's working for him now? What's he got in his life now that he didn't have back then?
The NHS aren't as involved, which is good, I think, sometimes, because the negative of the hospital clouded their judgment on how he could be in the community. So now his carers are pretty much in charge of his day and his care, which I think helps because there's no stigma. Like, that was one of the biggest things. What's written about you sticks with you until you get somebody that's willing to say, that's not the Elliot I know.
Yeah.
And that's the stage we're at. It's Elliot's led. What he wakes up and he's like, we're doing this. And the staff, if it's manageable, will do it. If not, they say, I think we should make a plan for that one. And then they make a plan. So if he wakes up and says, I want to go to London, they're a bit like, let's make a plan, because they can't just jump in the car and go. But
Yeah.
anything, it goes to see his trains, Railway Museum, drives out in his car, goes to the Deep when it's closed.
Brill. Yeah.
Comes up to see me.
Yeah. Brill. And what are your family visits like now?
Yeah, different. Waited on hand and foot, shouts from the sofa for his tea. Yeah, it's great. It's just, but the best thing about that is that I've always been strong that no one comes in my house. That is the only place that he can be by himself and have a bit of normality with
Yeah.
family.
And I think it is different. I think the relationship you have with a sibling has to be protected as its own entity. And I think we've spoken before about how differently some of the care providers treated your relationship and respected your relationship with Elliot, as well as your mum's relationship with Elliot, and what that looked like and how that looked different. And you're not carers, but it doesn't mean you can't care for Elliot, and it just looks different. And I think there's value to us listening to that and making sure that we're hearing it as well. What would you say to anybody that's kind of in that situation now? You've probably learned quite a lot of lessons on the way, kind of maybe steps to take, people to get involved. Like, what would your advice be to anybody in that situation?
Don't pick up the phone for help. No, there's great organisations out there if you look. And they're hard to find, but yeah, and like, there's people out there, there's ways that you can reach people. Make sure you've got good peer support.
Yeah. And that's part of what you do now, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, don't lose each other along the way.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there was times when me and my mum really like disagreed and I fell out, but don't let them drive a wedge between you, because you're better united than, like, mum had her strengths and I had my strengths. And but no, there's people out there that, like MenCap and like the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, your MPs, like, just keep talking about it and highlighting that it can't go on.
Yeah. And that's part of what you do now, isn't it? So since all of the trauma of that situation with Elliot, you kind of set out to support other people and help people in that situation. So you've done work with MenCap. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we've got a family group that we go to twice a year where families get together who have been in difficult situations, and we campaign for how we can do things differently and highlight it out in the media so that we can show that this can't go on and the stuff that we're doing to change.
Yeah. And there was a Christmas campaign with that recently.
I did the Christmas campaign with Elliot to show that they don't need to be in hospital. They live for life in the community to help. But that vital funding helps people like me and the other 2,000 people out there get that support.
Yeah, definitely. What stands out for me in everything is, and I don't hear it, I guess, that often, is, I've picked up on it a few times, is that kind of sibling inclusion. You've said about, finding peers, finding people in the same situation. You're part of a sibling group, is that right? So you meet up with other...
So along the way, I've been lucky to meet some great siblings who totally get it. And it's like, you have your friends and, you know, they're great, but they just don't get it. And then you meet people who do have siblings like Elliot who just really get it. And like without them, it's changed, like, because it's somebody to go to that you can say, this is happening, what can I do? And it was just connecting and finding people from social media who had been in the same situation and reaching out to organisations like MenCap who have obviously put me in contact with like peer support and friends for life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very special connection,
But
isn't it?
siblings are, as you said, like the inclusion, like with professionals is like non-existent. It's automatically your mum or your dad. And when your mum is not well because of the situation, I had to step in. And luckily enough, they did listen. But if it was a decision, it always felt like if I didn't agree, I would say I don't agree, but then they'd go to mum.
As the final say.
Yeah. Then sometimes it would be mum would side with them, or sometimes it would be no, I agree with. But they would always try and weave between you to try and accomplish what they wanted as well.
Well, that's a challenge when you need to be a family unit really together.
I think siblings should be recognised because, you know, we're the young ones. 9 times out of 10, you know, there's people out there that are older parents and, you know, they need help from, but we're constantly not seen as included as family.
Yeah. And, you know, there will be a time, and it's happening now, I think, more and more where siblings who do need a level of support, we've got, you know, that mum and dad are getting older, they're unable to support in that way again. So I think we do need to think about how we transition that really in terms of over to siblings and what that looks like. Not all siblings will want to take on that level of responsibility. So that's another consideration. But where they do, how are we supporting people and recognising them in that process?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the work that you're doing only highlights that. So that's going to be really helpful to that cause. Just as a wrap up then, if we were to wave some kind of magic wand and start this whole process again, what would have been the perfect landscape for Elliot's admission into hospital? What would you, if you could rewrite that journey, where would you start and what would you say? Right, we needed this in place, we needed this to happen, we needed this to happen.
I think we needed better community support to help in the situation, and it could have been we could have managed it together in the community rather than shipping us miles away from home into a unit where you just didn't know. The system just to join in together, and, you know, people that genuinely care and want people to thrive in the community, not just see it as a job. Because 9 times out of 10 people are in the job because they want to be, but then the other lot don't. It's just, there's no attachment. And I get that you don't want to be attached, but you have to have some kind of care and drive that I can do better for this person.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot talking to various different guests, is that actually what everybody says is care is humanity. Care is, dare we say it, love for your fellow human being and what that looks like. So I think you're absolutely right. That has to be at the core. Yeah. Brill. Any final words? No. Thank you so much. I know it was a really, really challenging story to tell.